What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Echoes of Elsewhere, the podcast where exploration meets emotion and the stories hidden inside forgotten places. I'm your host, Courtney Autumn. There is something strange about abandoned places, as we all know. On the surface, they look empty, silent, forgotten. But the longer you spend inside them, the more you realize they aren't empty at all. They hold memory, pieces people have left behind, pieces of time, and sometimes if you listen closely enough, they begin reflecting parts of yourself back at you. Today's conversation is one that genuinely stayed with me long after we stopped recording. I'm joined by Blake Pfeil, creator and host of the Abandoned All-American Ruins podcast. And what started as a conversation about urban exploration quickly unfolded into something much deeper. We talk about ruins as emotional landscapes, the psychology behind why we're drawn to forgotten places, storytelling, loneliness, memory, grief, imagination, and how abandoned spaces can quietly mirror the state of both our inner worlds and the world around us. This episode felt less like an interview and more like reconnecting with an old friend who speaks the same unspoken language of exploration. So whether you're here for urbex, storytelling, or simply trying to make sense of the strange beauty hidden inside forgotten things, settle in and let's wander elsewhere with Blake Pfeil. I was thinking about that when I was listening to your podcast, and I was like, this is so different, and I love it. But I was like, I can't wait to talk shit about some people with him because I know that you know how
I do.
How it is.
And I think it is possible. Listen, toxic positivity is so far from something that I understand. And let's be real, everybody talks shit. It is human nature. Gossip is a currency, and I fully believe that. But the difference is this is diplomatic shit talking. So
Yeah,
we are this is a democratic diplomatic shit talk with all done with love.
I was gonna say it with dirty liberals.
Those dirty liberals. We're so
It's tempting to title this episode just that. Diplomatic talk with the dirty liberals.
I'll send you screenshots of all of the reviews that I've gotten on my show of people who call me a snowflake for mentioning my distaste for the United States government. I've been thinking about putting them on a t-shirt like Casey Musgraves did with that one tweet she got. And she made, I don't know if you heard about this, but Casey Musgraves, she got some like really intense tweet that, you know, called her a whore or whatever, and she fucking made merch out of it and made tens of thousands of dollars.
Yes, I saw that.
It's like, that's called business.
That's also called like instant karma.
Oh, I mean, it is that's just like such a boss move. I love her so much. But anyway,
I love anyone who's that savage. Like, I really do. I aspire for it.
Me too. And it's like gentle savagery. There was no intensity. She just boop, put it on a hat, and tens of thousands of dollars later, she was like,
that for me.
Did you have anything else you wanted to call me? Because I'm low on my merch stock and feeling inspired.
You could also do like that trend that's happening right now where people are turning texts into songs or whatever. Like, it's just like people you just see the blue bubbles come up and there's like a track going behind it and it sounds like an emo song or something. You should do that with your like little snowflake reviews. That would be really funny.
Well, and you know, I'd be lying if I said I didn't care a little bit, because those reviews will genuinely prevent people from listening to the show. And so it's discouraging. At the same time, the people who are being turned away by those reviews are probably not the people I want listening to the show anyway.
They might actually be doing you a good favor. It's like filtering your audience for you.
Probably.
You don't have to screen anyone.
Probably. But as we were saying off mic before you hit record, I'm really tired of screaming into an echo chamber, and I'm really tired of not speaking up when I hear people talking again about those talking about us dirty liberals. I'm so tired of it, and I'm not keeping my mouth shut anymore because I don't care. I did care, and then I stopped caring. I don't know what happened.
And I think, like what you said earlier, is that lady pointing out that you're not going to change this guy's mind that you're getting into a discussion with. And people forget that it's not our goal to change anyone's mind. We're just not going to be silenced by their bullshit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care if you go to sleep tonight feeling the same way you did this morning before we got into it. But the point of the matter is that I want you to feel as inconvenienced as I do when you're going off on a rant. So I'm going to rant back, kind of thing. So that way, maybe next time you can go out in public and be quiet.
And just listen. I don't even care if you agree with me or not, bro. Like, I'm not the bitch who's going to try to change your mind. I'm really not. But I am the bitch who's going to ask questions because I really want to understand where you're coming from. I mean, I think that's kind of how I've been operating with not just like living in life, but even, this body of work that I've been working on is just curiosity. I'm just curious. My best friend who passed away in August of 2024, Julie Novak, our friend Celeste, she had like her final 3 days before she passed, and there was a rotating cast of characters going up to her bedroom to say goodbye. And our friend Celeste said, "What does it feel like to be on the precipice of this?" And all she said was, "Celeste, I'm really curious." And I was like, if that's not the best way to live, even as you're like 72 hours in counting, like to your deathbed and still curious, I don't know what else. I don't know another way to live.
Yeah.
And I do think curiosity is often conflated with, I don't know, being a devil's advocate or being argumentative or just being difficult. And I don't see it that way. I just think I'm asking questions, and I think you're the one getting defensive. I mean, my God, talk about snowflakes. Jesus Christ. These fucking people. They can't. They just can't leave the house without putting the dukes up. And I'm like, girl, again, to quote Cece, y'all need to find Jesus. And I mean Jesus.
The proper one.
The proper one.
Yeah.
And she's listening. She's there waiting for you. Just hurry up.
It's true.
Yeah.
She's patient.
She is. Love is patient.
Way more patient than we are.
That's why she's Jesus.
We no longer have time for that, on the other hand.
We don't. And she forgives us of our sins, of our impatience and lack of humanity sometimes.
Well, it's only reciprocated, I think, at this point, like.
I'm just noticing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was completely jumping the subject, but I just noticed all of the gorgeous photographs behind you. And I feel like I almost recognize the one that's the bottom left side of your screen, the red roof. So that guy.
Yes.
Who is that?
That's
I think I recognize that.
That's a school in North Carolina.
Nope, I lied. I don't recognize that.
Like, I don't know how well traveled you are. You been to the South a lot?
No, I've only been to the South once, and I was not willing to go lower than North Carolina as far as urban exploration is concerned. Not at this juncture. Maybe in another lifetime, but
you should.
I want to. I want to. I really do, and and I think that's right. I think it would be best done in community, because exploring in temperamental places solo is a challenge. It's scary.
It is.
And very real. Everybody wears guns like jewelry at this point. So
yeah,
it's funny. I really do like being alive. I don't love it that much, but I love it enough to like stick around for another at least like 30, 40 years. And I would like to watch my nieces and nephews do their thing and become people and not people, but actual, you get it. And
they're not humans right now. It's fine.
yeah, they're subhuman. That's exactly right. Disgusting children. No, but like, I don't know. I would like to explore the Deep South more because I just know that it's a treasure trove of property. But gosh, is it scary to do that
think
right
about the
now.
consequences.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. I will say having a female around helps. I've noticed here they're like less quick to be reactive and ask questions first and take action later kind of thing, you know. So
Isn't
I
that
will say
interesting?
that. And honestly, most of the all of the cop encounters I've had have been very, very, very pleasant and have not ended in arrests or any weird things. I've just been warned a few times, like, hey, get out of here and don't come back. But for the most part, one cop recognized me and he was like, oh, hey, I think my son listens to your podcast. And I was like, what?
Oh, that's
The
so
hell?
sweet.
And I was like, wait, what? He was
Oh,
like,
that's
yeah,
so
he's
sweet.
16 and he's like real obsessed with all this like abandoned building stuff. And I was like, do you want my
That's
autograph?
so sweet. Yeah. I love that. That's a good story.
It got me out of trouble, I think. I mean, I don't think he was going to do anything anyway, but I'm sure it helped because he was like, oh, I know you. And I was
It
like, oh,
is
no.
it is interesting as white-bodied people though, right? Like
Mhm.
I am actually next week I'm going to be producing an episode unlike most episodes that I produce, and it will just be a conversation, excuse me, with my friend Callie McKenzie, who is an activist and an organizer. And she brought up to me, she's a Black woman, she brought up to me, have you ever really thought about your privilege before in all of this urban exploring? And I've touched on it in a couple episodes, but it's never been something I've been fully like thoughtful about. And there was this one time where I was with a friend of mine who shall remain nameless to protect them, but we were exploring a particular space. Somebody called the cops on us. This person is a brown skinned immigrant. And I was very aware very quickly when the cops showed up in my body this responsibility to become sort of a barrier between the police and this friend of mine. And I left wondering how would that have gone down if I hadn't been there, not just because he's brown skinned, but also because he's an immigrant. And it was the first time where I was really, really actively conscious about it. And so I'm excited to talk to Callie because I presented at On Airfest back in the end of February. And during the Q&A, a Black woman raised her hand and she was like, I think this hobby is so interesting. Have you ever? And she basically asked me the same thing that Callie did. And I was like, you know what? I think we need to get this on record. I think we need to have a conversation on record about the privilege of being a white skinned person
Mhm.
and therefore being afforded more opportunity to practice this hobby because it's not the same for Black people. It's really not. Especially right now, you know, we're in the midst of what is it now? 7 states just gerrymandering their fucking asses off and in a way that is so blatantly racist and adhering to white supremacist 101. It's like the book of white supremacy. They're just checking off all the boxes.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important to be talking about right now as
Yeah.
urban explorers. It's our responsibility as purveyors of space and people interested in the either usage or lack thereof of space and architecture and the things that protect us from the elements. And
Mhm.
you know, architecture being the oldest form of art aside from maybe dance, it's wild to me that this is not more of a conversation. So I'm looking forward to, I don't know how this tangent happened, but I'm looking forward to talking to my friend Callie about it because I like being challenged and I like hearing a side of a story that I never would have heard otherwise because that's not my experience, you know?
No, totally. Obviously, it's something I've thought about as far as like being in a white body is concerned and the privilege that does come with that. And it's just It is very eye-opening when you experience it in real time, like you were saying, when you're exploring with your friend and then the police gets called and then you have this whole exchange where you're suddenly so aware of someone else's experience that's so different and you're doing the exact same thing. And it
Yeah.
shouldn't be that way. It is so just like unjust and unfair where we can't feel like we're just living on an equal landscape,
Yeah.
yeah. So that is an important conversation to have. I'm glad that is that something you're doing for your podcast next?
Yeah, it's going to be a
Yeah.
bonus episode because, as you know, it's just so nowhere close to the format of what I do. But I just felt like I would be remiss if I didn't have some kind of piece of the puzzle talking about this. And maybe it's not as integrated or mindful as I would like it to be, but eventually, I don't know. I'm so interested in the act of exploring abandoned properties as a show of resistance to this moment that we're all in the midst of, this just absolute swamp of nightmares. And it's always very curious to me when people in the urban exploration community are really resistant to talking about the politic of urban exploration and the origins of urban exploration being extremely related to political resistance and the mere act of having the human right to wander, and particularly when a building's not being used for anything except to just sit there.
Mhm.
um so yeah, we'll see what happens. It's kind of like a quarter formed thought right now, but I think getting to sit down with Callie and chat about it next week is going to hopefully open more passageways to figuring out what this is. But in this particular season, I'm already talking about race quite substantially, actually, because the first episode takes place at the Sumner School in Topeka, Kansas, which is the school where Linda Brown was barred from attending. And what I don't talk about in the episode, curiously, again, to use that word, that school, which is abandoned, ironically, is now owned by a black church in Los Angeles. And they are refusing the city of Topeka to sort of like stay up to speed with the upkeep of the building. And they are they don't communicate. They don't respond to emails. They don't respond to phone calls.
What?
And there's something so fascinating about that, because here is this building that was built specifically to prevent black-skinned children from receiving an education on par with their white peers. And now it's not only ironically abandoned, and notwithstanding Linda Brown never even got to set foot one day in the school because the Supreme Court takes forever, but now a black church owns it, and they won't let a basically entirely white city council touch it. And you have to there's something about that to me that is so striking. And I keep telling people, and they're like, that's so crazy. And I'm like, it is. Like, that feels like a huge story, actually. But I'm gonna need, like, if I really want to tell that story properly, I'm gonna need like $100,000 so I can fly to Los Angeles and like stand outside of the church and like bang on the door and be like, I'm so sorry, but I need to know what's going on. This is fascinating
You're
to
like,
me.
"I'm not here to cause trouble." You're like, "I'm on your side. I love your work."
I That's right. And like, I don't even know if I care one way or the other, but to ignore this storyline, I don't know. There's just something about it that I've been obsessed with this since 2020 when I picked up the hobby again. Because it had been years and years and years since I had explored. And
Oh,
then,
wow. So this has been going on for that long.
well, I started exploring abandoned buildings when I was 6 because we lived I lived in the
6?
mountains of 6 years old. I lived in the mountains of Colorado. And there was this abandoned dairy farm down the hill from my house. And my father took my brother and I there when we were kids, just to sort of rove the property itself, not the buildings. And as we were, it's such a crystal clear memory. We were walking down the hill and we were on the backside of the farmhouse, and I could see that there was this space on the bottom side of the door that was just I was like measuring it in my head, and it was just enough space that I could shimmy underneath and get into this farmhouse. And this was 1993, 1992, and so at that point we had free range. We left the house at 8, we didn't come back till 7, and it was the Colorado Rockies, so it's just like endless wandering. And I went straight to this dairy farm the next day, 6 years old, and I shimmied inside because I was so curious. And I stood up in that building, and it was like I had like torn open the time space continuum or something. It was just like physics were defied, and my imagination just exploded. It's again, it's like such a crystal clear memory for me, because it I had this feeling, and I've chalked it up to an overactive imagination, but poetically I had this feeling like I had been there before. And it took me decades to figure out that this is not an uncommon experience, that many people, in particular urban explorers, experience this feeling of sort of, it's like almost vicarious nostalgia in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that was that space, this abandoned dairy farm. It was like a church to me. It was the only place that I felt truly safe. Definitely where I learned to harness my creative imagination, that's for sure. But it was also just like where I learned to talk shit and tell stories. And I spent hours in this space talking to ghosts and playing pretend and learning the craft of storytelling. And then it burned down. We moved. My parents got divorced. Life happened. I was a teenager. Then blah, blah, blah. And then the pandemic happened. And I returned to the hobby because I had a dream about this dairy farm. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like I forgot about that space kind of. It was always like in the back of my mind, but it was never something that was like an active interest. And then this dream happened and I was like, I wonder if there are any abandoned spaces around, the area where I live in. And sure as shit, there are many of them. And so, yeah, I think it was almost like the pandemic, what a tragedy that whole time was. And also in just my personal experience and the situation that I'm in, it was a revelatory time for me, and certainly a personal revolution of just sort of reclaiming all of the qualities about myself that I had pushed off to the side because of shame and fear and cultural expectations. And a huge part of that was this vehicle of urban exploration, and employing it as an opportunity to reconnect with that little kid in me who was so full of wonderment and so sensitive and so deeply in awe of human capacity to create, and also conversely human capacity to abandon. It's very easy to abandon a building, as it turns out.
Yes.
And and it's always, and I'm sure I know you know this, but there is not once have I walked into a space, particularly the ones that look like they've been raptured, where everything is just there. It is always astounding to me. Like, this is your life. Our lives are memorialized by the spaces that we live in and the things that we put inside of them. And I'm all for traveling light as a human just through life. But there are certain tokens that, I have found full photo albums of family photos that are just sitting there. And I'm like, this is a totem. And it was so easy for you to leave it behind. And then to converse my converse, like, isn't that the point? My friend Isabel says it all the time. Nobody gets out of the video game alive. So what are we holding on to these things for? And why do we feel this obsessive need to put so much importance into the buildings that we occupy and the things we put inside them. And, I think I can kind of chalk it up to just being afraid of death, which is fair because we don't know what happens. But um, I don't know how this tangent happened, but
I love you.
I don't even think you asked a question, but this is, let's say, yes, I've been exploring actively since 2020, and it is a return to a hobby that was less of a hobby and more of a spiritual practice that I occupied as a child without even realizing that this was church to me.
Yeah, that is how it feels, especially because I feel like the younger you are when you start, the more it does ignite this part of your imagination that not a lot of people experience unless they're experiencing being inside an abandoned place. But what a cool story. It's different too in the 90s where we could just be our free selves. It was the best time. I'll just die on that hill, to be totally honest with you, because that's just
That's
the way it
right.
is.
That's right.
Um,
And it's hard to express to people who are younger, even by a decade.
I know.
The 90s were, and I was too young to really have any sort of coming of age understanding in the 90s, because by the time I turned 12 in like 2001 or something, like it was well past the millennia that I started to come of age in the way that we all understand coming of age. But pre 2000, 92 to 2000, there, I wish I had known just how important those years were, because I think I would
I
have
know.
spent a lot more time really paying attention and being present, rather than always living in a dreamscape bubble, which I guess is its own version of being present. But certainly it was a time of freedom. And when people ask me if you could go back to any decade, would it, and I don't even think I'm like the 90s, I would go back to the 90s,
100%.
and I would be in my 20s in the 90s, where
Oh my
you
God.
could,
Ugh.
right? You could do anything. You could just like, you could
Yeah, and you feel
exist.
great and you're not old. You're not old.
Yeah. You're right. And you're not right.
Not
You're
that
not like
I'm like
waking
that
up.
old, but you start feeling it after a certain point, and not like, oh, you're back certain. You're just like more aware of how fast time goes by, and you realize how, even if you could live your whole amount of time over again, I just feel like it still goes by way too quickly in the perspective space that you're in as you get older. I'm sure that happens year by year or decade by decade. But that's the beauty of abandonment too. That's why I love exploring, because I get to almost feel like I'm escaping this timeline temporarily. And that's like chef's kiss because, we're in a weird era of time right now that's not it's not really favorable. So I think any
No.
any escape you can get is good for me.
Yeah, agree. And we're on the precipice of the sixth mass extinction that this planet has ever experienced. And quite frankly, wiping out our species is probably going to be the best move for Mother Nature. Like, we suck so hard. And
We've ruined everything, so
yeah, and talking about just the reasons that urban exploration and abandoned buildings specifically, and under that umbrella term, are so exquisite, is seeing firsthand how insignificant compared to the planet we are, and
mhm,
how quickly she can dissolve us,
mhm,
and just how feeble we are to think that we somehow have some sort of, can just exercise some sort of greatness while we're alive. It's just like, no, you're like a peon in a just massive, massive, bigger than you could ever imagine scenario. And so you you better get hip to that, because
mhm.
otherwise death is going to be a huge challenge for you.
Yeah.
And you're never going to find serenity
No.
ever.
No. I totally agree. One of my questions that I wrote down to ask you is if going into abandoned spaces has changed your view on permanence and life in general. And obviously It has.
Yeah, it has. And I also think it's, you know, more so than permanence, it's opened up a portal of understanding to show me that my understanding of permanence and mortality is so far off of what's actually probably true.
Hmm.
And it's why when I hear, you know, spiritual religious wars happening in real time in this country right now, I'm just like, y'all are dumb as hell. You have no earthly idea what happens once the heart stops beating. You have none of us do. And so I think that's the other piece of it too, because I had access to these imaginary ghosts, it just lent itself to really living with more gratitude, I think, and respect for the universal design, which is to say, I don't know what that means. I don't know what
Yeah.
universal design is. But we're here and we're doing it. And I'm watching my lava lamp right now from Spencer's Gifts, you know, circa 2005, like going up and down right now. And it's a beautiful thing, you know? But yeah, mortality, what a cool experience we get
Hmm.
to go through, you know? And
Totally.
I've been talking about this with friends. Like everyone is talking about buying guns and the country's going to civil war and this, that, and the other thing. And they're not wrong. But if people ask me like, have you bought a gun yet? I'm like, nope, I have not purchased a gun yet and I don't plan to. Well, why? Don't you want to? No, I don't want to defend my right to exist, to be completely honest with you. If you are so hell-bent, you know, imaginary person over here, on making sure that I'm no longer alive so that you feel more comfortable being alive. Okay, you know, like you're going to get an extra 30 years on me, but you're going to live with the absolute sour fact that you feel so insignificant that it's easy for you to think about me dying so that you can have more oxygen to breathe. Um and as I was saying, I like being alive. I love being alive. Actually, it is so extraordinary that we get to experience this. This is an incredible opportunity that we have, but I'm not about to put up a fight to do it. I'm just not.
No, no. Well, especially when you're talking to a wall, you know, like what are you going to say to change their mind? And if it takes
That's
me
right.
lying to you so you can go to sleep easier, thinking for a second even that you've converted any of my belief system or structure of how I think about myself or how I carry myself or live my life, then you just got lied to. As humanity in general, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or you're not political at all, I feel like we can collectively see that we're going way back in time with how we're doing things. And it's almost like disrespectful to being alive at this point, especially if you're a certain age and you're an adult and you have the right to vote. Because I'm like, why are we signing up to go so far back in time, which just means we're starting over and have to evolve from this space that we've already once evolved from as human beings? We can just learn and do better as we should be because we're evolved freaking people. Like it's just so crazy. So yeah, I get it. I wouldn't have the will to have the tireless argument every day. Like I'm already losing the will, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean I can barely remember my middle name at this point. You know, like I'm struggling to like eat 3 meals a day consciously. It is unbelievable actually. And I use the word unbelievable very specifically. I never it in my wildest imaginative dreamscape, never did I think that what was once the coolest digital stomping ground, i.e., 1999 to 2005 internet, would become the absolute detriment of an already genetically parasitic species like the human race.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we are parasites. Even the most evolved among us,
Mm-hmm.
we are putting our bodies in cars that are pummeling the atmosphere with just egregious amounts of pollution and putting things in plastic bags that we put in the I mean, it's extraordinary how cancerous we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any problem saying that about humanity, because the proof is sitting right there. And to be completely honest with you, I was born and raised in a conservative Christian town. Colorado Springs is the evangelical capital of the world. At the time I was living there were more evangelical churches per square mile than anywhere else in the world. And I
Holy moly.
watched the beginnings of American Christian nationalism, and this population of people, especially white people, who have no culture and to call their own, and the very little pieces of culture that they have to call their own are all wrapped up in either an invisible man in the sky or a flag at a car dealership, and like, oh, and maybe the military. And this isn't even my own idea. I don't know if you listen to Jennifer Welch, the I've Had It podcast, but she was just talking about this the other day. Somebody asked her what Christian nationalism was, and she was like, it's just a bunch of people without culture who are desperate to have culture and who are also afraid to die. And that's what God is. God is an invention of powerful people to help keep the masses afraid of death. And it's been weaponized, and it's so gross to me. And gosh, aren't we lucky that we can seek refuge from all of this from time to time inside these little time traveling spaces?
I know. That is what I always call it. It's time travel without the machine.
Yep, that's right. Right. And like my friend Isabel, the one I mentioned earlier, she even pointed out to me, she was like, dude, like when you get in a car, you're time traveling. Our bodies were not meant to catapult through time and space at that velocity. Like, our bodies walk. That's what we do. So in essence, anytime we even drive a minute and a half away from our homes, we're time traveling, because we weren't meant to be hurled
That
through
is
space
so
like
crazy to think about. Especially if you're doing like international travel, because then you're for real time traveling. You're going into you're like, girl, I just hopped into tomorrow.
Exactly.
And if you travel back, you're like, I just hopped back into yesterday.
That's exactly right. It's so funny. Anyway, I don't know where we were going with all that, but I love exploring abandoned buildings so much, and I feel very lucky that it's something that I get to do. And it has been a refuge from the very beginning of it. And it's so funny. This whole body of work that I've been developing in All American Ruins has centered around this precipice moment of entering this abandoned dairy farm as a child. And it got to this point where I was like, did I make that up? Like, is that even true? And then in the course of like a month and a half, one of my oldest and dearest friends, Courtney, and a former neighbor of mine who just so happened to be like working at this residency that I went to go be at for a month, and had forgotten that she had been my neighbor. On separate occasions, I took both of them when we were children inside of this dairy farm. And so I was like, oh my God, thank God, because
You're like, someone's here to validate.
well, truly, I was like, if I just made all of this up, which is not uncommon for somebody who has an imaginative existence to begin with. It's just like, I'm predisposed to magical thinking. But it truly terrified me, because I was like, we have to have some, I mean, this body of work is intentionally blurring truth and fantasy on purpose. That's like the whole point.
You're like
of
on
this.
Google, like farmhouse burning down.
Right. Right. And it wasn't, because I knew the farmhouse burned down. I knew all of that was true. But what I suddenly tricked myself into thinking was like, did I actually go inside? And I did a lot. And so that was nice to learn, because I was like, should I throw in the towel? Like, this is all built on a lie.
Do I need to put a disclaimer out there that I retract that whole entire sentence?
The whole prologue of this body.
That one thing that I said, it's not true.
Didn't happen. I'm so sorry.
Apparently my 6-year-old self was hallucinating.
We like
I
come to
saw one
discover.
house one time and it was over after that. A whole lifetime of stories evolved.
Right. Like we come to discover that like we were, the strawberries in my backyard as a kid were like laced with mushrooms. And so everyone was just fucking tripping for years.
Your parents are like, we're surprised you remember anything, honey.
Yeah.
Your whole childhood is an illusion. You never came out of your room. What are you talking about? So I wanted to know how long between the time that you got back into exploring abandoned places and the start of your podcast, or how long before the idea for that emerged?
It's a good question. So part of this pandemic revelation that I had was also a return to a divine creative spirit, I guess, and the reverence for creativity as something that I have always leaned into as a person struggling existing in the world. And a friend of mine, and there's so many jokes about this on the internet that I just love, but a friend of mine told me about this book called The Artist's Way, and it's essentially like a 12-step program for creative recovery. And in fact, it is modeled after the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, but in a really just sort of clever and subverted way. And one of the big tenets of the Artist's Way are what Julia Cameron, the author, who, side note, is James Cameron's sister, who wrote the book, are what she calls morning pages. And it's basically just like at its fundamental core, journaling nonstop and like not letting the pen stop moving. So you're just journaling and journaling and journaling. And the other piece of this program that kind of stuck with me are what she calls artist dates, where you take yourself on a date, like a solo date, and it has to have some kind of creative aspect to it. And so the reason that I had this impetus to go explore these abandoned buildings wasn't just feeling drawn to them the way that I was when I was a kid, but also because I was doing this course, and it's a self-guided autonomous course that I was really determined to finish because it's hard. It's a very, very challenging book to get through. And there's a lot more to it than that. But these artist dates became another reason to go explore these abandoned buildings because they're just chock full of art. I mean, not just graffiti or the photos that I found after the fact, but also the buildings themselves are so artistically and aesthetically pleasing to me. And so I started journaling about these experiences that I was having and started connecting these dots between my childhood self and my present adult self, and all of these feelings that I was having about exploring these places. And it wasn't just feelings about the beauty of the decay or the history behind the decay, but really at the same time being representative of the underbelly of Americana that we refuse to acknowledge as Americans. And they became symbols that helped me really start to understand this moment that you were just talking about, that we find ourselves in, this just tempestuous, odious, moronic moment that we're all living through. And so, all of this is to say that I started going back and reading these journals, and within 6 months of the pandemic, I had started the All American Ruins blog. But the thing that I love about this body of work, and I know you know what I'm talking about, is that it was built and channeled of its own volition. It has always been the captain of its own ship, and I have merely been a passenger. And I have ridden the waves and I've listened to it. And that takes some doing. It's to develop a relationship with a creative project that is healthy is a real challenge and an uphill battle. It always will be. Even the easiest of projects, it's just the nature of the beast. And so these journals, I started putting them into this blog, and then I started putting photos in the blog, iPhone photos. I'm not a photographer by any stretch of the imagination. And I did start wondering, there are so many just gorgeous photographers and videographers and choreographers and graffiti artists occupying this space. What can I offer artistically to this community that doesn't exist yet? And I'm a writer by trade, and I'm a storyteller. My 9 to 5 is I work in storytelling. I work for an organization called TMI Project, and we are a true storytelling nonprofit that is specifically looking for the parts of people's stories that they leave out because of shame or embarrassment. The TMI parts, which are the parts that, inevitably connect all of us. And so I was looking at all of this writing that I had been doing, and I was like, oh, this is actually like really, not to like pat myself on the back, but I'm like talking about some pretty interesting shit here. And I'm also lucky that my mom is an English teacher of almost 40 years, and she's an editor. And so she was editing all of the blog posts from the beginning.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, well, and it was also it was good too because I could have objective perspective from someone whose memory is way sharper than mine. I mean, she's like one of those freaks who just remembers like the things she wore that one day back 25, 30 years ago.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah, no, I could never.
no, I'm just not built that way. But as this was all happening, I work at a radio station part-time outside of my full-time job. I have a radio show, and the executive director of that radio station, WKNY, he was like, "Hey, did you ever think about like making a podcast out of this?" Because they were starting a community podcast program, and he just himself happens to be really interested in abandoned buildings. I said, "No, it's so funny that you say that though, because I've always wanted to, but I think you can also attest to this. The word podcast has a very specific cultural connotation at this point. And when you hear that word, it is automatically just four white chodes sitting around a table talking about whatever. And it's, or true crime. Those are the options.
That's true.
As far as culture's understanding of the word podcast is concerned, like general pop culture
or mental health.
Right, exactly, like self-help, like yeah, let them. But sorry, I just don't cut that out. I want that on record, actually. I'm over it. I think it's so toxic. But I started thinking about it, and I was again looking at these journals and all of these imaginary characters that I was writing into these stories that I was writing, and really dissecting American culture and my place in it as a queer person. And, then like starting to slowly uncover the fact via my dear friend Chelsea Weber Smith, who is the producer of American Hysteria. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you must. It is perfect. But they said to me, don't you think as a queer person, you kind of understand abandoned buildings a little bit more because they are unseemly as far as the general population is concerned, as we are as humans? I was like, that's interesting. So this was all sort of like bouncing around in my head. When I was a kid, again, growing up in Colorado Springs, we like the last house my mom lived in before she moved to Oregon, her kitchen window like looked out across the road at Focus on the Family headquarters. Like it's that kind of place, and it's a military town notwithstanding. But the beautiful thing about living there was that the Christian radio station that exists there, 100.7 FM, shout out. I'm not a Christian, but I love them because at late nights, they would play vintage radio dramas. And I think I was more obsessed with those than I was abandoned buildings. Audio storytelling is everything to me. I don't think anything quite sparks the human imagination the way that audio does. And I know you know this. So I started thinking like, okay, well, how do I somehow fuse my blog posts, modern journalism, and audio drama? And so I started playing. I had never worked in audio before. I'm a musician, so I've been in, recording studios basically since I was a kid. And I've always been obsessed with radio, and I work at a radio station. So like I know how levers work, and I know like turning volume up and turning volume down, but like a sound engineer I am not. And so I'm really lucky that the radio station I work for has a beautiful podcast facility. And so that first year of like trying to sort out what this podcast was going to be, I was in this studio sometimes till 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, moving levers and pushing buttons and turning up this thing and turning down this thing and seeing what worked and what didn't. And, slowly but surely, I think by the end of season 2, I had nailed down what this particular piece of this overarching body of work in All American Ruins is going to be. And I wanted it to be separate. People ask, why is it called Abandoned, the All American Ruins podcast, and not All American Ruins? And the answer is very simple. I have a master's degree in arts entrepreneurship, and I knew that people weren't going to be searching All American Ruins podcast. They were going to be searching Abandoned podcast. And when you Google that, I am now the first thing that comes up. And so it was more of a strategic move than anything else. But to answer your original question 47,000 minutes ago, the time between when the podcast knew what it was, or like had really made itself clear to me, or known to me rather, and starting to pick the hobby back up, I'd say like a good 2 years, because within that time, I really wanted to do this right. I really wanted to get it right. It was really important to me. And so I joined this podcast. It's now called an incubator. At the time it was called, what was it called? A fellowship. But SUNY Stony Brook in New York State, they have this podcast incubator. And I applied for the program and I got in, and they really showed me the ropes over the course of 9 months.
Oh, wow.
And helped me figure out like, what am I doing here? Because when I entered the program, I had these episodes. They sounded pretty cool. I was still learning a lot, and I'm still constantly to this day learning, but there was no siphoned tunnel storyline. It was just sort of all these scattered pieces. And these people who have made podcasting their careers, these are journalists and media makers with just like unbelievable resumes and reach, also just like professional reach. I soaked up everything that I possibly could. And so, yeah, I'd say it took me 2 years to really nail down channeling this particular piece of the puzzle. But I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to stop trying to fine tune it and figure it out. Like, I don't know if it's ever going to land, quote unquote. And after the end of the second season, I started getting a little more buzz around the thing, and had meetings with networks and this, that, and the other thing. And every single network that I met with, they were super interested in putting the show on the air with a little more gumption, but they all wanted me to go back and sort of retool a lot of the first season in particular. And I didn't want to do that. I really like having a historical document that shows my progression from first episode. And I'm sure you feel this way too. Like, the growth between episode 1, season 1 and episode 1, season 4 is just like astronomical. You can hear the intention development and the technical skills and all of the things that come along with those things. And also just like learning to be a better storyteller. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go edit all of that. I want this. This is my photo album. This is these are my journal entries. This is a journal. And it's my journal. And so, yeah, I'd say it was like a 2-year process until it really like took shape.
It's shocking to me that they would have interest in your work to begin with, but then want you to adjust it.
Well,
like,
yeah,
I don't know.
The other thing about that is these networks now, podcasting is so completely different than what it was even 5 years ago. And if you're not pumping out content at the very least once a week, it's more likely that a network's going to pick you up if you're producing like 5 episodes a week, which I don't that you'd have to never sleep, but it
Oh,
takes me soup to nuts approximately 55 hours to produce every single one of these episodes. I have a full-time job. I have a social life. I have a part-time job. And this body of work isn't just the podcast. It's also the blog and the short film anthology and now a live performance experience that I've been working on. And I don't have the time. I just
yeah.
don't have the time to be producing an episode a week. I'm barely with with 9 months of prep work and episodes being released every other week and only having 12 per season, I am still barely scraping by. I'm like in the middle of episode 6 right now. And I'm like banging my head against a wall because I'm like, I'm never going to finish this because it takes so much time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I'm so
but
glad I'm
they,
not the only one. Even though
no,
I
no.
can't even imagine your editing journey and all those layers of different things that you have to do to make your episodes like that. I can't.
But
For
even,
me,
but
it takes me just for an interview episode that I don't let usually run over like 90 minutes to 2 hours for my sake and sanity. So I don't have like a 4 hour file just chilling there staring me in the face. That will take me sometimes like 8 to 10 hours to edit
no
that,
question.
so, and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't. 55. How do
Well,
you even
and
still have the podcast? I'm like, I'm retired.
Well, but
I've
if you
retired.
well, but if you think about also the time it takes to book a guest, the time it took to put together your prep work and to put together your back end operations and preparing guest communications and staying in consistent contact with your guests and then doing the marketing on top of all of that, I would argue probably you're doing more than 8 to 10 hours on an episode.
I mean, that's true, but you're doing all those things too. I mean, minus like maybe the guest stuff, but you still have to do all the same stuff. You still have to do your social media stuff and all those same things. So I don't know. I think you're looking at definitely like 3 times the amount of time at the least that I spent. And I'm sitting here bitching constantly about how
No,
long
but
it takes.
but it's good to it's but isn't it nice to talk to other podcasters and
Yeah.
remind ourselves that like as isolating as this work can be and as confounding as it can be, it's really worth it. And your show is beautiful. I mean, it's hard. I think honestly what you do is far more challenging because yes, like you know from a branding perspective, this is a chat cast. You're bringing guests on, you're asking them questions and they're responding, and then you cut it. And first of all, it's not that easy. That makes it sound a lot easier than it is. Second of all, you're up against a sea of other podcasts doing the same thing. What differentiates your show from a lot of people's, and the reason I was intrigued to come here, is because it is very clear to me that you're mindful and that you're a storyteller. Some of the work on your Instagram feed, I'm just like, oh my God, like what a breath of fresh air. There's poetry to it, and it's gorgeous and it's dramatic, and you are introspective and you understand the things about these spaces that I also feel like I understand. And so I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't sell yourself as short as maybe you are, because your work is gorgeous, and I'm just so happy to know about it. I've been hoping at some point a show would really like pique my interest. And yeah, Echoes is you're just killing it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I felt that when I told you I found you from that list, and we both like appeared on it, and I don't even know what I was looking for. I was looking for something on Google relative to podcasts. But anyway, that list popped up as one of the search results, and it like had my podcast name there, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then I clicked on it and I was like, what? That is insane work. And then I saw yours, and just like the cover and everything and the name of your podcast, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I feel like this is so different than like what you normally are used to. And like you, I'm a writer first. Like that is oh my God, I can't live without it. Writing is my therapy. And so I do write a lot about exploring, and I've done a good bit of that, and I think that I've spent the last like at least 6 or 7 months thinking about kind of where you were, I guess, that moment where you're like, how can I converge and mesh all these worlds, that are so kind of seemingly far from each other, but not really if you experience them. And I still really haven't figured out a way to do that, but I really, really, really appreciated that I found you from that list, because as soon as I started listening to it, I was like, wow, you do so well at just making you feel like you're a part of the story and the space that you're standing in. And it's so rare to really be able to feel that, because I feel like there's people that are really great storytellers, and that's one thing when it's their own imagination drawing the visuals, but you have these soundscapes and these things that go with what you're saying. And it's such a unique journey to be on, because it's like I'm seeing what you're saying. And that's
Mm.
so rare. It's almost like reading a book. So, all that to say that I really, really, really love what you've done. And I'm glad that you had that just light bulb go off in your head that was like, how can I make these worlds come together that feels almost like a proper way to honor these places without just talking about them and laying out the facts of the who's, the what's, the when's, because that stuff is important, but you really take people there in such a poetic way, and that's just amazing.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that, and thank you for saying all of those things, because a couple years ago I sat down with a sort of foundational podcaster, I would say, somebody who's like really been in the game for a long time and has been quite influential in it. We sat down for lunch. She just happened to move to the area that I'm in, and I don't remember how we got acquainted, but we agreed to meet for lunch, and we sat down. And the first words out of her mouth were, "Okay, so you're never going to have like a huge audience, right?" And it was,
What?
well, but it was I needed to hear that, to be honest with you, because at the in the moment I was like waiting for my body to feel, cuz I have 4 planets in Scorpio. I'm sensitive as hell. And I was waiting after she said that to feel like badly, and like I should try painting. This is a waste of my like this is so, what a waste of time. But it was like my spirit was craving that fact, because again, in addition to all of the things we've talked about with how culture perceives the word podcast, it's also often a very passive act when people are consuming it. It's something that happens in the background. It's something that
Hmm.
people have on while they're cooking or while they're driving. And it is impossible for people to listen to my show without intention. I was on a mission, man. Like I had so many friends express to me how badly they wanted to go to these spaces with me, but they were too scared to. And a big part of where all of this came from was I want my friends to experience this just like awe of these spaces and really understand why I'm so deeply connected to them. Um and I think I can engender that kind of feeling through audio, because again, audio just sparks the imagination, and it's scientific. I talk about it in episode 1 of season 4. The auditory cortex and the visual cortex are constantly in dialogue with one another. And it's like a lot more complicated. I'm not a scientist, but like there is real science behind not just the healing properties of audio, but the way that it makes our brain explode in imagery. And so to hear that is your experience, really, it makes me so proud that I have kept with this work, and that I really like doubled down on how I was approaching it, because she wasn't the only person that told me I wasn't going to be quote unquote successful or have a big audience. And that's not what she meant. She clarified it by saying, she followed what she said by, but this is art. You are making artwork
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
And I was so proud that from the beginning, I made sure that people knew at the top of every episode, if you want to do this right, you need to stop what you're doing. You need to put headphones on. And if that means it takes you a year to get through a season, then please take it. I'm not here for the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. Anyway, this is all to say that I thank you for saying those things, because it's the solitude of producing this kind of work can really get to you. And so I think the more that I've done it, and I have this motley crew of supporters and people who listen the way that I always hoped people would listen to it. Because it's also more than just taking a trip. I want people to feel healed in this moment. It is being a human right now is pretty fucking devastating. I mean, it's always been devastating, and like we are privileged, I think, as Americans to only just be catching on for real what it actually feels like. And we're still so far from, being human beings in a situation like the Gaza Strip where your existence is just absolute. I mean, it's just so fucked up. But when the pandemic started and we started watching, just constant upticks in the number of people who were dying that first year, 1 million people. That's a lot of death. And that's a lot of mental unwellness. And everyone is fucked up now. I think if you're not mentally ill in 2026, I don't think that you're a human. I really don't.
No.
Like, if you're not medicated right now, what are you even doing, Jan? Like, it's so crazy to me. And
I agree.
And so
at least with something.
Yeah. And I don't want to distract people from, what's happening right now, but we can't exist in the world if we don't have opportunities to find sanctuary and peace. And I'm almost 13 years sober, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that my serenity stays intact. And I wanted people to feel the same way. I care about people so much, to the point where sometimes it's like it's more than I can bear. And so if this was the only way that I could like give a couple people even an opportunity to feel a little bit of reprieve from this just onslaught of being a human being right now, then I succeeded.
Tell me a little bit about the first time you got nominated for an award, because I saw that you've won some awards for your work.
The first award I was nominated for, I got second place. So I called myself the Michelle Kwan of that particular year. It was the Colorado Society of Journalists Top of the Rockies contest. And I got second place because I got to work with the organization History Colorado on a multimedia piece that was both a magazine article and an accompanying bonus episode. So that was the first award that I won, and it was really fun because it was my home state. And I didn't know anything about these very, very silly awards that are, to be completely honest with you, kind of meaningless unless there's cash attached to it. But personally, they are very gratifying. And I met my mom in Denver, and I was under the impression that it was going to be this like grandiose thing. And I bought an outfit, and she bought an outfit, and like we went to a nice dinner beforehand, and we showed up, and it was like in a conference room at like kind of a grimy hotel in downtown Denver.
Stop
and like
it.
they didn't even have like an awards presentation. It was like a Microsoft like a PowerPoint.
They PowerPointed your ass.
They PowerPointed me, but it was great. Again, it was just like another learning opportunity to be like, oh, these awards are meaningless. This is all like self-gratification. And so if it means
I can't wait. I hope one day I win a weird award so I'm going to post about it, and I'm going to tag you and be like, look, my first meeting.
I love it because like, again, like they're not, I'm being, this is a little bit hyperbole, but they, I had this idea that once I won my Ambie Award, which it's like the Grammys of podcasting, like it was going to catapult me into this stratosphere. No, the next day I woke up and I had a mortgage to pay and I had to buy groceries and like,
and everything's normal.
Like it was Tuesday. Like, and
you're like, my follower count didn't go up.
No, literally nothing changed. The only thing that changed is there was like another article that popped up if you Googled All American Ruins. And even that now gets buried in the SEO disaster that is Google.
Oh, shit.
And it's so funny, earlier when you were talking about finding that list that you and I were both on, I Google myself every day.
You Google yourself.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? Like, I want people to hear this work, and I will do everything in my power to get this on as many ears as
I
possible.
love you. You're like, I Google myself 100 times a day just so I can.
Literally every day, sometimes twice.
You're like a trending search at all times. It's just you.
That's right. Both my name and the All American Ruins. I have Google alerts.
I'll help you. I'm gonna Google your podcast every day.
but it's I want people to listen to this work because most people don't really they don't really jive with it. They hear podcasts, they're like, I don't really get it. But the ones that do get it, they really get it, and that is so, it makes me feel so tingly. I just love it so much, down to my toes. So yeah,
well, that's
anyway.
how you know you're doing what you set out to do, and that's what matters most, especially when it comes to your work of art and something you're really deeply connected to. So yeah, I totally get that. But that is great nonetheless, especially when you definitely didn't start your project with the intent of this timeline of numbers and analytics attached to it. Like you just wanted to put a piece of yourself out there. And and you've done a great job. So yeah, like you, I'm grateful for my listeners. I don't need 100,000. Like, I'm good with where I'm at. And the fact that it keeps growing and that every day another person is there, or every day another few people come, and that's great, because my goal is to just make sure that people understand collectively our community a little bit better. If you don't understand why we do what we do, and to other people it just looks like we're meaninglessly just frolicking around in abandoned places, and it's for the photos or for YouTube or for the clout or whatever, and it's none of those things for a lot of us, and most people don't realize that. So I think you do a good job at conveying that without the conversation to be there as the necessary anchor of it all. And I can appreciate that, because it is so super poetic, and the people that really resonate with it will be there. And you've done such a good job that I'm guilty of being one of those people that's, even as a podcaster, I don't actively sit down and listen to podcasts. I do put them on a lot in the background. I'm doing laundry, I'm doing something. And I tried to do that when I was initially hopping into yours. And I was like, oh, I got to shut my computer and really listen, And it made me stop what I was doing. And it made me realize how much I'm always doing too, that I need to just take a moment, because I'm never just taking a moment. And so it was nice to just sit on my back porch with my headphones on and listen to your podcast and really be able to just have that whole experience. And you do it in such a nice digestible window of time where you're not looking at this long timeline. I'm sure some people sit down and listen to my episodes and it takes them 3 days because they're listening to it in all these different stages between activities that they're doing. So yeah, you've done a really good job. What has been like the hardest part in capturing the atmosphere of these places, because you don't have a lot of conversation with another person there, but you do such a good job at still making sure it's really resonant of the place and it displays it like properly?
Well, first of all, wouldn't it behoove all of us to slow down a little bit? My God. Talk about the 90s. What a great time to be bored. Really, no one's bored anymore. And when they are bored, they have to fill it with some kind of screen. Yeah. It's just like everything is so instant.
And you know what I miss the most is the concept. I think that, like, even though I can be impatient, and that's just because I'm an Aries, and being a 90s kid has taught me the patience I would otherwise not have at all, because of the fact that we had to do things like when cable TV, you know what I mean? Even on the radio, trying to catch our favorite song, like whatever, like we had to be patient. We had to wait for the stars to align. We couldn't just have it all at our fingertips. We couldn't just be like, let me play my favorite song right now, or all these things. Like all of that evolved for us actively as we were living. And I think that taught us so much, like the opposite of what is being conditioned into youth now, you know, like they're not born with that reflex of waiting. They're born with like, oh, I can get it right now. You know, and I'm like, oh my God, what is that going to do to your adult brain when everything is just firing off constantly, constantly, constantly? Like, that's crazy.
It is it is crazy. And you know, some of my one of my fondest, this can sound stupid, but I don't care. One of my fondest memories as a middle schooler was the first time that I was in media play. And kids listening out there, if you don't know what media play is, it was like the Best Buy of CDs and tapes and movies and gadgets. It was just like, it was a huge big box store with media, the media play. And the first time I was in a media, like in a public space, and Vanessa Carlton's "A Thousand Miles," which was my favorite song for years, not even ironically, like a deep connection to that song, like so deeply connected to it. The first time I heard it, like in a public space without me needing to press play on and my mom, she can't even hear the song anymore because I played it on repeat so often. But the first time I heard it without being the purveyor of hitting play, I remember exactly where I was in the store. Like I remember that first coming on, and I was just like, that's my song, and that is God telling me that I'm supposed to listen to this song right now. But even with a CD player, if I didn't have my Discman and I didn't have Be Not Nobody, which is the name of her first record, in that Discman, I had to wait until I was in a space where I could put the CD in the player and hit play. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so gratifying to hear that.
Were you ever one of those people that had to like, did you wait at when the radio would play your favorite songs so you could record it on like a cassette tape? Because that is a resilience no one will ever know. Like you're sitting here and you're like, oh girl, it's gonna be the next song. I'm ready to hit record. And then it's not. And then they go to a commercial and then they come back and you're excited and it's still not the song. And then they keep teasing the song because you know that they're going to play it. And they're like, oh, next up, next up. No, still 3 songs later, and you're like, I want to die. Play the fucking song. And my finger has been on this record button for 8 years.
Oh, without question, without question, I was obsessed with Rob Thomas when I was younger. Just like it was unhealthy. And I was obsessed with the
Did you
Goo
know
Goo
you were
Dolls.
gay at this point?
Oh no, that I mean, like I don't think I fully got the like, oh, I only do butt stuff with men thing until I was probably like 17, where I finally was like, stop leaning into that whole bisexual narrative, girl. It's not working.
No, a lot of us take that gateway though. No, it's true. Like the girl I very first dated in high school, she was my first girlfriend. And I was her first girlfriend. And I saw her from across the cafeteria. And I was like, I think I'm in love. And I know this girl is gay. And then I was friends, or I ended up being friends with one of her best friends. I didn't realize that they were close at the time, but then I found out later. And I was like, hey, tell me about your friend. And I was like, is she gay? And he was like, oh, no, she's bisexual. And I was like, that is a lie. She's lying to you. I was like, maybe she just doesn't know it yet. I don't know. And I gave her shit about that for years because I was like, you're just one of those people. You had to take the gateway.
That's right.
Like the gateway drug. But
That's
it's like
right.
the gateway excuse to be with the kind of person you really want to be with without committing wholeheartedly to
Oh yeah, I
everyone in
mean the
public.
second, and like I'm not going to say his last name, but the second I saw Leonard Blank's dick for the first time, I was just like, I'm in. Tell me my fortune. Like, I'm here for this.
I had the opposite reaction.
You're like, what is that appendage?
We both had the reaction each other was supposed to have if we're calling the Bible true. You know what I mean?
Oh, and everyone's gay. I don't care what anyone says.
Oh, I
Everyone's
totally
kind of
agree.
gay.
I'm like, and then
Yeah.
the more homophobic you are, the more gay you are to me. I'm just like, ooh,
Yeah, I went
Girl.
to I mean like I ran in cross country meets against Ted Haggard's kids, and like that guy, he was just, come on. Like just be gay, man. Like it's so fun. We have so much fun. And
They're like,
like,
it's better over here.
yeah, it is. And you can still be afraid to die. That's okay. You can still believe in God even. That's also cool. But like,
He comes over here sometimes.
yeah, but like you also like to put penises in your butt. Like you're gay, dude. Like be gay. It's okay. Poor
Uh,
thing. The shame is so unbelievable.
I
Um
know. It's crazy. I'm like, well, wouldn't it be better if we just lived in a world where you could just come out and be whatever? You can even change your mind tomorrow. We don't care.
we don't
Look at
care.
JoJo Siwa.
That's right. Oh my god, Joe, poor Tradwife. That whole thing is wild. Talk about, boy, that's
Uh,
some trauma. Like
I
that is
I'm
tough.
still having a hard time figuring that one out. Like, I love to psychoanalyze these situations, and I knew, like, when she was really doubling down on her homosexuality, I was like, she's really gonna regret this.
Yeah.
This is giving me in high school, and then I still, like, wound up dating dudes, getting pregnant, having a kid, and now I'm with females, which will
Yep.
forever be the case going forward. However, like, if I announced it to the whole world and I was JoJo Siwa, we'd be looking a lot alike right now.
I mean, this is the beautiful part about getting older and having the good fortune to figure all of that out, and the wherewithal to conquer that shame and that fear. The freedom on the other, the liberation that one feels on the other side is just extraordinary. And I don't think, I mean, I'd have to think about this a little bit, but I don't think I really even actively understood what that feeling was like in my body before and after coming out. And I'm sure I could deep dive and go back into it, but I could not keep that secret anymore. It was impossible. I was I was just bereft all the time. I'm so, I mean, not even, I don't know, just not even human, just like a shell of a human. It's
Mhm.
so, and it's so distressing because there are, in 2020 fucking 6, we still have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people living in that shame spiral because they're so afraid that somehow some invisible force in the sky is going to smite them when they die
Yeah.
because of this like one little book that was altered in 1946 to say that gay people go to hell and not pedophiles. Like,
Yeah.
so unbelievable to me. And actually, to your earlier question, that about what's been the hardest about making the show, that actually might be the hardest thing, is really getting comfortable with my voice being the driver of the narrative and putting aside cultural expectations of how I'm supposed to tell a story.
Mhm.
I think that was really hard. I think especially the first year in figuring out, how do I do this in a way that's welcoming but also maintains the ethics of what I believe, not just as like a human, but as a storyteller. Like, what are the ethics of storytelling here? And how do I keep this out of any kind of self-indulgent territory? And I don't think that I was entirely successful in that regard. I think I've definitely gotten better. And again, not to bang this horse into the ground, but like as someone with 4 planets, including my sun in Scorpio, it's really easy for me to retreat into indulgent thinking and behavior. And so I think the challenge as a writer and as a creator and storyteller has been from the beginning, how do I keep people interested in this narrative that is, in essence, just a bunch of journal entries? Because, journals aren't interesting unless they leave the 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 public or the people reading it open to identifying with the experiences that they have over the course of their life. And when you're especially talking about something that a lot of people, as you were saying, don't necessarily understand, how do I get in there, and how do I find the things in life that are maybe a little less obscure to help people understand why this is so awe-inspiring to me and why this has been such a healing practice, exploring these abandoned buildings. And I don't think I'm ever going to get it perfect, because there's always going to be someone who's like, that didn't work for me. But I've gotten to a point where I'm super comfortable with how I'm telling these stories, and it's continuing to evolve also. Like, we're now dipping our toes in live performance territory, and like, I'm returning to my original creative roots as a theater maker, and that's been its own mind fuck. But I would say that's been the biggest challenge, asking myself, how do I write these stories? How do I tell these stories in a way that's going to keep people interested for 22 minutes, you know?
Mhm.
And I was kind of distressed that the first episode this season goes over half an hour, because I was like, no one's going to listen and it's going to be bad, blah, blah, blah. And then every single person I've talked to said it's their favorite episode they've heard since the start of it. So maybe people want a little longer form. I don't know, but I don't think anyone should be expected in 2026 also, as much as I appreciate rest and talk about pausing. It's hard to do that. We're all poor. We have to work. We like, nobody has money, and we have to like figure out
Gas
ways to
cost,
buy.
gas costs
Right.
$10 a gallon.
It is so, it is
Yeah.
so outrageous. But anyway, I'm rambling now. I think that was the biggest challenge.
That makes sense. And I really didn't consider that, because you have to do both things at the same time. For the people who don't understand what it's like to do what we do or why, and to take them there in a way that is interesting and relative, because that's what everyone's looking for, is how is this about me too,
Yes.
like that's almost how you have to make your content these days.
Mhm.
And that makes it even more layered of a process as far as your journey for the podcast is concerned. What do you mean when you're talking about your next step for the performative stuff? What does that consist of? What does that look like?
Well, one of the sort of like genesis points of this body of work as far as audio is concerned, I saw a play on Broadway in 2016 called The Encounter. And it was a solo show. And when you walked into this Broadway theater, every single chair had headphones on it. And he had all of these binaural microphones positioned all over the stage. And over the course of this play, you had to wear headphones the whole time. And the suspension of disbelief between when your eyes were closed and you were immersed in the narrative, and then opening them and like being ejected back into your seat as an audience member was so fucking cool. It was so cool. And it was one of the most gratifying artistic experiences I'd ever had. And like, as a kid who grew up listening to sound storytelling and being obsessed with it, I was like, oh, I mean, this is top dollar work.
You're like, this is heaven for me.
Yeah, this is it. And then when I had started building All American Ruins, this is 2021, I drove from Portland down to Los Angeles, and I stopped in San Francisco for a few days, and I went to this theater company called Audium, and it is a dome in San Francisco, and there are, I think it's like they said 192 speakers covering this dome. And so you sit in the round, and it's audio theater, and you listen to these audio pieces in the dark that are entirely immersive. And so, because I'm a theater kid at heart, that's where I started as a creative. Maybe music, but theater was my whole life when I was a kid, and it's what I trained in. I knew at some point this was going to become a theater piece. I just didn't know what that looked like, because I think solo shows are so dreadfully boring and like not really interesting. But with this, when I got this residency at Greenbox Arts this past December, and they gave me this grant to come and like kind of play around with my stuff, that was when I was like, okay, I think this is now, we're going to start building this. We're going to start to like see if we can invite that particular divine creative spirit into the room and see what, she might have to offer, if anything. And so the first 4 episodes of this season are actually the first draft of that audio theater piece. And in
Oh,
December,
nice.
I got to present the first movement of this piece, which like inevitably is going to change entirely, but I got to, which is the first episode of the season, I got to perform it live for an audience of people in this beautiful theater in Ute Pass, Colorado. And everyone sat around in a semicircle and had headphones on, and I live mixed and told this story as it was progressing, and there were visuals on the back wall to accompany it. And it's very much in development, but essentially I I wanted to be on stage and interact with people. And that was the other part of it that's so fun, is I get the audience up onto stage with me, and I have binaural microphones on stage, and I have them help me with the Foley art. And so there are pieces of that episode you're going to hear in episode 1 of this season where there's like a moment where like a newspaper is being read and this old transistor radio is turned on. That was all the audience
Oh, so cool.
creating those sound effects live. And I think the reason that it lends itself to theater so well is because when we go, I know you can attest to this, when we go in these spaces, they become like little theater sets. It's like a set, you know, it's not real anymore. It doesn't have the like it's not the intention of what it was originally no longer exists. And so I always feel like I'm kind of like on a movie set, but theater in particular, I just think because people want to be in person right now, it is so important for us to be back in this place where we're allowed to gather in person. I want to meet the moment that way. And I do think without having to say all of these things that I've been thinking about the country directly, theater is a really, really good place for that. And the way that I write has always lended itself to theater making. But we still have so much work to do because like it's hard. Because again, if you're gonna do a solo show, you better do it right. And it better
Mhm.
be good because no
Yeah.
one wants to sit through an hour of I was 6 years old when I first saw, you know, like who, no one cares. So yeah, anyway, that's where we're at. And so when you listen to the first 4 episodes of this particular season, just know that they are intended to be told in real life in a theater with all of the gadgets and goo-haws that are going along with it.
That is
And
so
we'll see what
interesting.
happens.
That is actually such a great idea. I would want to be there one day for one of those, so keep me posted on that because I'll
Absolutely.
come to New York if I need to.
Oh,
I
well,
will.
I have this audacious dream that I'm gonna be able to do it at the Audium someday. Like that's I have this
Oh, that would be
vision.
so full circle too. Yeah, that
Yeah,
would
it
be
would be cool. And then like obviously I I went to musical theater school. I got my BFA in feelings and always wanted to do the Broadway thing, and that would be a huge dream, but you know, you got to put a lot of work in to get to that kind of point. And yeah, so that's what we're doing right now.
so that's kind of what like the future looks like as far as what you're working on
I
in
think
reference
so.
to this anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And the last episode of this season is actually just a straight up radio play that my friend Stev and I wrote. Stev is telling his story that I am producing because that's the thing about this season that's also different is I have 3 guest hosts. They all wrote their own episodes, and then I'm going in and giving them the All American Runs treatment. They're telling them. But Stev and I wrote this radio play based off of this abandoned house that we found when we were driving back from Colorado back to New York after this residency. And so it's not even an All American Ruins narrative, really. It's just a straight up radio play that we're producing that is very gently based on this house that we found.
Oh, I love
Yeah. And I think after this season, I'm going to take a step back and see what it looks like to move forward with this as an audio series. I don't know if I have any juice left in me. And I also don't know if I do come back to do this again for another season, it's going to be we're going to focus on one space and we're going to get super journalistic about it, and we're going to like make a one-off podcast series, probably like 6 episodes specifically to tell the story of one space, or it will be a season of other people telling their stories through the All American Ruins lens, and me working more as an executive producer as opposed to a writer and a
That's nice.
host.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see, because Mama's tired and she needs a break.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Do you take breaks usually between your seasons and stuff like
Mhm.
that? Yeah,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure you need like a good reset.
Oh yeah. It's and the interims have gradually gotten longer and longer and
Yeah,
longer. So,
that'll happen.
you
Yeah.
know.
I used to be one of those people, I think as most people do when I was starting and I was trying to figure out like how do I even get listeners or how do I do
Mhm.
anything, you know? And when I was in that weird phase of where numbers momentarily became important,
Of
I was
course.
like, oh my God, I can't take a break. I have to post every day and I have to do all these things. And now I'm just like, it is what
Mm-mm.
it is. Like, it'll
Yeah,
be
and you're
what
not
it
doing
is.
it for them. You're doing it for you.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
your word. You're a writer. This is for you. And I hate when I go to like conferences or like webinars or like workshops, and the people leading the sessions are talking to you as if what they're saying is the answer to
Yeah.
whatever the thing is that you're. I really hate that. And so it's easy for me to sit here and say, keep going, something will pay off, because I don't know, none of us know that for sure. But what we can be sure of is this is deeply gratifying work if we remember and remind ourselves that the reason we're doing it in the first place, at least for me, is because I want to be able to understand what all of this is, because it is very confusing, to go back to the beginning of this conversation, to be alive right now and thank God for art.
Mhm.
Truly, there is nothing more important to me right now than hanging out with people and making shit. That's all I want to do at this point.
Same.
So I applaud you and hope that you keep going with it, because I really do think what you're doing is very different. And I don't remember what you said, but I commented on something that you had posted, and it was such a simple sentence, but it was so gorgeous. And I was like, fucking finally, somebody with a point of view and a position about this stuff that's original and sounds like them. And yeah, so I hope you keep going, because it's rad.
Thanks. Yeah, I plan to. And if I
Good.
ever want to give up, I'll just call you and be like, hey, I need you to stroke my ego because I'm about to give up the podcast.
Here's the deal. You can say whatever you want about whatever industry. There is no community that is more supportive than podcasting. And I believe that to my core. I have never felt more uplifted and supported and encouraged than by podcasters. And it is my intention, as somebody who cares about people just in general, to support and uplift as many podcast voices as I can, because right now the creative ecosystem is starting to fall prey to the big guns who are trying to make money off of all of us. And there is no medium that is more accessible and autonomous than podcasting, because anybody with a microphone or one of these who has a point of view that is compelling can make a podcast and reach a significant number of people. And I will, as you said earlier, I'm going to die on that hill. I hope people keep making podcasts the way that podcasts were originally meant to be consumed, because I love filmmaking. I mean, I have a short film anthology, but I don't get the video podcast thing. I want to, and like I'm
Oh, I
starting to
don't
get into, yeah, and like I'm starting to get into Amy Poehler. Like I'm starting to kind of dig her show, and she's really good at it. But the rest of it, I'm just like, don't care.
No, I'm totally with you there. It's just like, what in the hell is happening? Why do we need to converge all these worlds that really were made to be that separate thing. Like
Yeah.
podcasting to me was made for the audio experience. So it's almost made the listening experience feel lazy
Agree.
because they've put so much focus into the editing of the video that when you're listening, it's almost like you can't follow anymore because they're like, oh yeah, this thing that I have in my hand. And you're like, well, I'm not looking at the screen because this is supposed to be an audio experience. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And like, no shade. Uh, there are plenty of talented people out there doing the video thing, and more power to you, but you have a YouTube channel is what you have. You don't have a podcast. Like, that's
Correct.
not what the
Yeah.
word is.
No.
But I'm also like, I don't mean to be on my high horse, because I also think language evolves, and I don't necessarily want to be a curmudgeon about it, but goddamn, like you said, you're just doing a YouTube channel. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, just then keep it on one platform. You don't
Yeah.
need to come into my RSS feed, Like, what you doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get it. But thank you for being here and for coming. I'm so happy that it worked out. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. I'm so grateful that you invited me here, so thanks.
Yeah, of course, of course. If you want to tell me where people can find you and any of the platforms that you put your work out on, any of that stuff.
Sure. The main hub is allamericanruins.com. That's where you can find the blog, which is the original body of work, the audio series, the short film anthology. I have started creating ASMR videos that I have been putting up on a YouTube channel that I'm super into right now. So you can go check me out on YouTube as well. But those are not podcasts, my friends. Those are YouTube videos. And then on Instagram, I'm just at All American Ruins.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
How did you come up with your name? Was it just like, I need something self-explanatory?
Yeah, well, it's actually sort of like a wink at my father, who is deeply MAGA and definitely in the cult, but he was an all-American athlete who never quite got to the point that he believed that he got to in his head. And I think there's something about that is representative of the United States of America. I think we've told ourselves a really particular story that is not true.
Mhm.
And I have, for many years now, called the United States the biggest marketing scheme of all time. And I love my dad. I love him deeply despite the cult that he has found himself in. But it's a wink to him because I think that he is really representative of the story that I'm trying to tell. So All American in particular was just like a wink to him being an All American athlete who saw himself and the greatness of himself in one way, versus the reality.
I love that. That's way deeper than I thought it was going to be.
Well, and if you want to learn more about my dad, there is an episode in season 3 called Star Wars Dad, and it takes place at an abandoned outdoor movie theater and arcade up in the Catskill Mountains, the Mountain Drive-In, and he is sort of the focal point of that particular story, because he and we don't have a lot in common, but Star Wars is one of the things that we share. And the last time that I saw a movie with him, it was right after he had been diagnosed with mesothelioma. And he and I went to go see Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, at an outdoor movie theater. And he fell asleep, which he is wont to do when he watches movies. And it was the first time as an adult that I looked at him and realized how small he looked and sort of insignificant. And that memory flooded back to me when I was exploring the Mountain Drive-In. So it's really, that episode is like a love letter to my father. And his voice is in that, actually. He's never listened to the podcast, and he probably won't ever. And if he does, I hope you dig the episode. It's a love letter to you. But he did send me, there's a poem, and it's called Little Boy Blue. And it is very in line with abandoned buildings and the things that we leave behind, and like what.
Wow.
Anyway, his voice starts the episode. I asked him to send me a recording of him reading the poem, and what's really interesting is, and go listen to it, because I think it's my favorite one that I've produced. he gets extremely emotional reading it and can barely get through it. And even just thinking about it now chokes me up. But it's, I think, the way that his voice starts to falter tells a story about the little boy in him too, who saw and sees America as one thing, knowing deep down that it's something completely different and as faulty as the San Andreas fault line, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I need to listen to that for sure. That's interesting. I'm surprised that he just did that, like, and recorded himself doing saying the poem and sent it to you.
If
Did
you
he
think
not?
I
Did
can
you
talk,
tell him that it's for the podcast?
mm-mm,
Oh.
no way. Because I know he'll never listen to it. But if you think I can talk, my God.
That's where you get it from, I guess.
I know where I get it from. Yeah. Well, it was really nice to meet you, Courtney, and thank you so much for having me. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
of course. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for the lovely conversation.
Totally. Hope to talk to you soon.
I think what I love most about this conversation is that it reminded me abandoned places are never just about the buildings themselves. Sometimes they become mirrors or archives for emotion, and sometimes they help us understand parts of ourselves we didn't realize we were searching for. A huge thank you to Blake Pfeil for joining me for such an honest, thoughtful, and deeply human conversation. This one truly felt special. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it, leave a review, or send it to someone who understands the strange pull of forgotten places and the stories that they continue to carry. You can find Blake and All American Ruins online and wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, all of his information will be linked in the description. Thank you for coming back and listening to another episode of Echoes of Elsewhere. I will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, keep exploring the allure in the abandoned, the beauty of decay, and the echoes of elsewhere.